Kakadosh Boker Or. Mishna Yomi Masechet Eduyot Perek Gimel. Mishnah Yod and Yod Aleph, 10 and 11. Let's start. This is chapter 3. Remember, page 73. There are 3 matters that Rabbi Gamliel was strict like Bet Shammai. Number 1, you're not allowed to insulate a pot of water on Yom Tov to use it on Shabbat. That means even though you did Eruv Tavshilin, that usually Eruv Tavshilin you're allowed to prepare from Yom Tov, right, to Shabbat. Here, you're not allowed to insulate the pot of hot water on Yom Tov to use it on Shabbat. Clear? Yeah, here it says a pot of hot water. Let me see here. When Yom Tov, biblical, fine. The rabbi is prohibited cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat in order to keep people from cooking on Yom Tov for a weekday. Nevertheless, the rabbi has also ruled the person cooked the dish before Yom Tov for Shabbat. He's allowed to continue doing so even on Yom Tov. There have been arrangement which permits cooking on Yom Tov, known as the Eruv Tavshilin. I don't know. Here it says hot water. Chamin is usually hot water. Okay, so he says, yeah, you're allowed food. Then mivashlim ela you're not allowed to cook unless you did Eruv Tavshilin. Then tomenin, but there's hatmana unless there's chamin tumunin me'erev Yom Tov, right? So and then that's number 1. Ve'en zokvin et menorah Yom Tov. You're not allowed to resemble the parts of a candlesticks on Yom Tov because it looks like building. It's like melachav building, which is prohibited on Yom Tov. Ve'en ofim pitin gritzin lekikin. You're not allowed to bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, right? But because you're not allowed to do more than the necessary, but rather you could only do thin loaves of bread. So when you're baking, you can't make thick, only thin. Amar Rabbi Gamliel says, they only made the very thin, right? The thin loaves. Okay? Samrulo, so the rabbis came and they said, what are we going to do with your father's household? They were stringent on themselves. But they used to rule leniently for everybody else. Meaning, what are we going to do? Your father's house, they were machminim on themselves, but to everybody else, they were mekel. So the same thing. You want to start being machmir, do whatever you want to yourself, but don't start being machmir on other people. Okay? That's going to be Mishnah Yod. Exactly. Exactly, for themselves. Yod Aleph, Mishnah 11. Okay? But he did say 3 things to be lenient. Mechabdim ben amito, you're allowed to sweep the food from between the couches. Right? Why? Because there's little concern that in such a small area, you're not going to do mashve gumot, which is a melachav like building. Right? Of boneh. Okay, but you're leveling the floor. So remember, in the olden days, they used to have dirt floor. So in between the beds, which means in between like where they used to eat, they were able to, but it's a small area, you're not going to come and suspect that. You're allowed to place incense, right, on the burning coals on Yom Tov to have a pleasant aroma. Right? Nowadays, they put it in the AC, so that way it gives off a good smell. In the olden days, they used to put it in the fire and used to give a good fragrance, huh? On Yom Tov, yes. Okay? So he says, why? Because it's a melacha, which is increases the joy on Yom Tov. So you're allowed to do that. And osim gedim kulas, right? Belele psachim. You're allowed to prepare the young goat together with the innards on the Pesach nights in order that you could have the Korban Pesach. It was roasted, obviously. Chachamim osrim. Chachamim come and they say all these 3 things are asur. Right? Why? You're not allowed to come and sweep in between because you're going to maybe do it other places in the house. You're going to level the floor. You're not allowed to put the burning coals because not the majority of people do not do it. So remember, you're only allowed to do on Yom Tov things which are dvarim shaveh bechol nefesh. That is something that everybody does, not somebody that does not. Nobody does that, right? And number 3, also putting the young goat with its innards on the Pesach nights because this was a specific requirement of the Korban Pesach, and doing so might cause people to think that one is eating the Korban Pesach outside of Yerushalayim, which that's going to be asur. So that was Mishnah Yod and Yod Aleph.